Welcome to Wild Turkey Science, a podcast made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Marcus Lashley, Professor of Wildlife Ecology at the University of Florida.
And I'm Dr. Will Gulsby, Professor of Wildlife Ecology and Management at Auburn University. We're both lifelong hunters and devoted scientists who are passionate about hunting, managing, and researching wild turkeys.
In this podcast, we'll explore turkey research, speak to the experts in the field, and address the difficult questions related to wild turkey ecology and management.
Our goal
is to serve as your connection to wild turkey science.
I feel like I need to say, and we're live.
Oh, really? Is that what you felt like?
Live. Oh, yeah. To pay homage to our guest today.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty excited about this one. Today we have Dudley Phelps from Mossy Oak Nativ Nurseries with us. And Dudley, we've known each other for several years, I guess. You've helped me over the years tremendously, which I appreciate.
Well,
You've done quite a few guest lectures for me, brought the class over to the nursery. You've also helped us with some of our experiments and collecting acorns and all that stuff. So that all was much appreciated. And I guess today I was excited because we keep getting questions about what to plant for turkeys. We just did a recent episode with food plots, but we wanted to, to extend that to trees and shrubs and other plants. And we couldn't think of anybody better to have on the show to talk about that than Dudley Phelps.
Well, I appreciate that. Looking forward to it. My favorite topic. I could talk all day. So I don't know. Maybe we should just get started and see where this rabbit hole of trees and shrubs ends up.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
Let's do it. So, Marcus, I don't know if you had something over there, but
no?
I do have one right off the bat that I'm
still riding your train.
And this is kind of like what got me, started on this topic is, you go out with landowners sometimes, and maybe they have mostly pine dominated uplands, and they've got some hardwood drains through the property. But there's many times that those hardwood drains actually don't have a very good species composition. Like a lot of there's not much oak representation, for example, in those areas, and you're left with a lot of relatively low value from an economic and a wildlife habitat perspective species. And so in situations like that, do you think, have you seen where landowners have successfully gone in and started to, replant back to change that forest species composition back over to something that's more favorable?
Yeah, it's possible, but just like a lot of those sweet gums and ashes and things, oaks are fairly shade intolerant too.
Mm-hmm.
So based on what I've seen and what I learned in forestry school, you almost have to have a clear-cut scenario to get oaks back into the, to where they're competing with the rest of the trees.
Sure.
It's a heavier seed, so it's not really it doesn't fly in on the wind like most early successional trees. So I don't know if I would categorize it as, super early successional, but, acorns get brought in by water and birds and squirrels,
right.
Things like that. But if they get dropped into a 20-year-old forest of ash and sweet gum, they're probably not going to have much of a chance.
Sure.
And so, in all honesty, you're probably going to have to do something to, you could go in and do some hack and squirt or some kind of treatments like that to release the very few oaks that you do find or other species that you want to keep. But you would have to knock those other early successional trees, but way back.
Right.
To really get, some young trees established again.
Right.
What about, you were mentioning doing some hack and squirt, forest stand improvement practices like that. In that situation, if they go in and kill maybe a half acre to 2 acres of the canopy, would that be a reasonable approach for them if they want to shift the composition and use the forest stand improvement specifically to get sunlight in so that they can replant it? Is that a viable
Yeah,
option? Have you seen people do that?
it is. And, most of us know the sun leans to the south during the day. It comes up in the east. So you can take that into account when you're doing
Mhm.
these treatments to get rid of unwanted overstory trees. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And you could even go in and plant in the understory and
Yeah.
in the winter, and then go in and hack and squirt. You don't have to like hack and squirt and then wait a year.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a viable option. I've got a place kind of near Mossy Oak offices, about 20 minutes down the road, and there is a lot of oaks in the understory, and I plan to just do some mega releasing. I've
Mhm.
already started, but all you need is about a half-acre area to get started on that. Anything
Yeah.
smaller, it may be struggling for sunlight, but definitely the shape of your opening can make a big impact. Definitely give them
Sure.
some room to the south, east, and the west.
And so I guess it would probably be important in a situation like that one for the landowner or the manager to control competition around those new trees until they can get, kind of, you don't want them growing alongside and having to compete with other trees, when you open up that canopy, right? I mean, I assume you'd want to keep the sweet gums and the poplars and all that at bay.
Well, I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but it's been years. But in dendrology, in hardwood, not dendrology, in hardwood silviculture, uh,
Ezel.
it was somebody who was on the papers with Ezel all the time, and his name is escaping me. He worked out of Arkansas. There was like a USDA researcher, Emil Gardner. They were working on the trainer tree project,
Mm-hmm.
and come to find out, a lot of those, I keep mentioning sweet gum and ash, but a lot of those trees make excellent trainer trees.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like about year 25 or so, um, the oaks end up winning the race. And the theory was that, the sweet gum and ash leaves in storms will blow around, and the oak branches and leaves will abrade the surrounding ashes and sweet gums and things. And so you end up with a much prettier tree with a nice high quality timber log on it, a good bole.
Mhm.
And somewhere around year 25, they're able to bypass that competition.
Hmm.
Um, but his name will come to me sooner. Kind of embarrassed about that, but really cool study. So yeah, if you wanted just oaks or just your keeper trees, you can get rid of everything around them, but
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna grow more quickly. They're gonna have a bigger canopy. They're gonna be able to
Mm-hmm.
make acorns at a younger age. But if you allow some of those other hardwoods to compete with them, they'll be taller,
Sure.
and they'll have pretty timber form. So
Sure.
you kind of just it all goes back to your goals and that whole "it depends" phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that same outcome oftentimes can kind of be, I guess, replicated, or maybe not exactly replicated, but with tubes, right?
Yeah,
Is that what you're trying to accomplish with planting tree tubes? And I guess maybe we should back up. And
Well, I was going
yeah,
to say I have another question relevant before we move on from this, but I do
okay,
okay.
have some questions like where you're going, Will, as
yeah.
well.
Go ahead with yours, Marcus.
Well, I was wondering, Dudley, we were talking about oaks specifically. Would you say that a lot of the soft mass species or other hard mass species that people might want to plant would be similar in terms of, what you would do in that situation where you have, a forest composition that's undesirable?
Absolutely. That may be some black cherry, which wild turkeys love, or
Yeah,
some persimmons, or black gum, or even a few hackberry.
yeah,
Um,
Hmm.
all of those make things that drop for the turkeys, and a lot of bugs drop out of them too. People
Yeah.
people
yeah,
tend to overlook that, just the diversity of those tree species, in that complex of forest.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It all adds up. But yeah, you could use those as your trainer trees as well.
Right.
That particular study, I think it's just a long ongoing study, was specifically dealing with sweet gum and cherry bark red oak.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
you can see it anywhere. It may be on an upland site with white oaks competing with hickories. But that's just how they evolved. So
Mhm.
they evolved
Yeah.
competing with other species of trees.
Yeah. Makes
But
sense.
you can choose to have a plantation style orchard, or you can go more like a typical forest, like you'd see in public
Yeah.
land. It just
Mhm.
really depends on the spacing. But one thing you can't do is have a bunch of oaks spaced really tight together. They don't compete well with each other.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, getting back to what I was saying a minute ago, I feel like I got excited about, asking scenario specific questions, but I should have asked first is, what do you see as most of the objectives that people are trying to accomplish when they buy trees from y'all?
Um, you know, it really just started, 15 years ago with folks wanting to plant trees to attract deer.
Yeah,
That was kind
attraction.
of the main
Yeah.
thing, like the old Sawtooth Oaks. People want to have, uh, you know, it's way cheaper than having a corn feeder dropping corn on the ground. It's biologically way better from a scientific standpoint. They just wanted free food dropping on the ground, and
Right.
uh, we just started learning like everybody else, and learning from all the data folks like you guys were collecting, and things have evolved over the years. And so, yeah, we've got a lot of folks that are focusing more on this whole early successional thing that y'all are so big on preaching about, and the
Mhm.
diversity. And so it's evolved. We've got folks planting trees that are doing like permaculture. We've got backyard enthusiasts trying to
Mhm.
attract butterflies and hummingbirds and other wild animals to their yard. But no, it's just a little bit of everything nowadays.
It's encouraging to me how I feel like I talk to more and more people that mention people wanting to, provide habitat requirements for wildlife that aren't even hunters, that are doing that in their backyard. And I feel like that's something that's unprecedented, and it's
It's
really
definitely a
exciting.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting for me to hear about the general public, trying to be, I guess in this case it's not gamekeepers, but to use y'all's
Well,
term, but it's like all species.
It
yeah, and
is.
the other thing, just to kind of add to that, I get the same fulfillment out of hearing about people that, like you were talking about, Dudley, 15 years ago, they were thinking about how to put some food out for deer. But now some of those people have gotten interested in trying to manage the whole system.
Exactly.
Maybe they're now trying to provide diversity for butterflies and, you know, whatever else that's on their property. So you've kind of seen that a change in
Yeah.
that way also.
I answer the phone and respond to emails all day about these kinds of things, and it has really evolved in the last 15 years. Used
Mhm.
to, all my questions were about spacing and, what's the best tree that makes acorns the quickest,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And now it's really evolved into, how can I incorporate these into my, this ecosystem I'm trying to build on my new land, or,
Uh-huh.
improve. We got rid of most of our invasives and all that, and now we're trying to put things back, and we
Yeah.
want it to be real natural. We want to include fire and this and that, and what can I put here? So
Yeah.
it's just changed a lot. But those tree tubes you mentioned earlier, Will, they do a lot of help. Not, we have so many deer now. 50 years
Sure.
ago, you could plant a tree and it would end up becoming a tree for the most part,
Yeah.
unless your uncle came through and bush hogged it. But now the deer just ravage them. But one thing about those tubes is it gets them up and above a lot of the competition
Right.
sooner than later. So you can basically have a 3 or 4 year old tree height wise in one growing season, with those
Mm-hmm.
tubes.
Yeah.
And back to this whole trainer tree thing, you can also keep it really clean around your planted trees for like 3 or 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of let them go and let those other early successional species come in just right on the coattails of those trees that you babied for 3 or 4 years, and give them a little bit of head start. And then once that forest gets going, you can walk in underneath them and selectively remove some of the things you don't want.
Yeah.
If you want to get some sunlight on the ground somewhere, then you can go in and do that. Or you want to go give an edge to a persimmon that you see growing, you can go in and do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all stuff we really enjoy doing.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that idea. I've seen a lot of people plant clover under their orchards and have them
Mhm.
be like a dual purpose clover food plot orchard, fruit tree orchard. But I've never thought about, you could almost just manage for brooding cover under, orchard like you were just describing. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of things you could play around with. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, Dudley, I definitely want to cover some of the fan favorites, and you brought one of them up.
Okay.
I was curious if you could walk us through several species, maybe several oak species, or throw in some others if you want. I'm particularly interested in chestnut also, but I was curious if you plant a seedling, when could you expect to start getting massed? Like,
Okay.
what's a reasonable expectation by
Right.
species?
So if you're kind of babying them, if you plant 40 acres of trees, plant them kind of close together, or just in nature, an acorn falls to the ground, that may be 25 years. That's what the textbooks have taught us.
Mhm.
But everybody knows, you go walk around at a park, or go to your college campus and walk around. There's 4 and 5 inch oak trees that are dropping crazy amounts of acorns.
Sure.
Mhm.
And so, but the thing about that is they were given everything they needed, full
Yeah.
sun, all the nutrients, even irrigation. But 10 years, I would think, is a fair expectation
Mhm.
on most oaks. If you give them what they need for the first 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then kind of taper off the active management and let them do their own thing, if it's a good site, 10 years is a piece of cake. On certain species, I've seen 6. Heck, I've seen 3, but that's not
Mhm.
common at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of the species, like chinkapin oak is a good one, live oak, among the natives, they'll begin producing at a really young age. Shumard, Nuttall, cherry bark, the rest of them, I would say, fall into that 8 to 10 year category. You go up north, swamp white oak, it can have acorns on it when it's 5.
Mm.
There was a study done out of the Mizzou that proved
Mhm.
that. Very common, 4 to 6 years old.
Yeah.
That's
What
wild.
about I don't know. I don't remember if you said white oak, but I was curious about white oak. And then I know there are a lot of people plant sawtooth oak
Mhm.
because of that expectation that they get massed really fast. So what about
Yeah.
those two species?
Yeah, so white oak is one of the more slower growing oaks, but it's also more of an upland species. So
Mm-hmm.
growing really fast isn't necessarily its competitive edge. And
Mhm.
you can even put a white oak on a really well drained bottomland site, and it's not just going to take off. I would probably put white oak more in the 10 to 12 range.
Okay.
But having said that, I've seen acorns on white oaks in as little as 6.
Mhm.
There's also a lot of diversity going on from one individual white oak to another, or any species for that matter. So you may plant an orchard of white oaks and have some of them start producing when they're 10, and some of them may not produce till they're 20. I've got an orchard of swamp chestnut oak, which is similar, that I planted with my granddad when I was 13, and I'm almost 50. And some of those trees still aren't producing yet, and some of them were producing by the time they were 10.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's
it's
cool.
just,
That's crazy.
yeah, a lot of diversity. So
Have you ever, Dudley? Have you ever propagated a tree that, from a very productive, mother tree that never produced an acorn?
let me think about that. I
Because,
have,
and I bring for the context, we've talked a lot on the show before, and I think on even y'all's show too about, how few of the white oaks in a given population are actually producing acorns. And so I wonder, like, how much genetic control can you have over that when you cultivate?
right. And keep in mind, those are all open pollinated. So if you're
Sure.
collecting from a really superior tree, you're not really sure
Yeah.
where the genetics, the male genetics are coming from. And so, yeah, we do try to choose from the most productive trees, but they're not always going to get that trait.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think more often than not,
That's so
they're,
frustrating.
yeah. But yeah, some of that work Harper et al. Did over the years with that,
Mhm.
we learned a lot from.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I think there's something to be said for these trees that don't produce very heavily. They've
Mhm.
got to have some type of role. I'm sure it uses a lot of energy to make a heavy acorn crop.
Yeah.
Almost every year, and so um, as far as culling the ones that aren't as productive, I really, I'd love to hear more about that. I'd love to see more
Yeah.
studied, but no, the oaks are not going to be true to type. There's some species you always hear about pawpaw are pretty true to type. Like you
Yeah.
plant one that has really big fruits and few seeds, and oftentimes they'll be true to type. But we're not trying to play God. We're
Yeah.
choosing some from the most productive trees we can,
Yeah.
and hoping for the best. But yes, we've planted productive trees and gotten productive trees. I think
Right.
we've been, making selections and planting. I think this is probably around, it's year 20. So we've seen some results, but no, you're not
Yeah.
going to get a good tree every time you plant from a good parent. In fact, I would hope that you wouldn't. I would hope that there would be enough genetic diversity out there
Yeah.
to not have that.
You'd almost just have to like clone or graft it to ensure that
Correct.
Yeah.
100%.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we've learned that, grocery store fruits and things, we've been making selections for years,
Mhm.
and all we have done is made them more susceptible to disease and insects.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
By doing that, by taking
Yeah.
that wildness out of them. You can see it in pecans.
Yeah.
You go to the Mississippi River Delta or anywhere native pecans are very common, and they do fine. But you take those and make selections and put them out in a monoculture field, um, you're having to spray them for bugs and diseases on a weekly basis just to get them
Yeah.
to make a crop. So,
Mhm.
yeah, let's keep Mother Nature involved in some of this.
Let her have a
Well,
say.
Yeah,
Dudley, we may have even had the conversation with you, but I remember when the end result of the long-term study with Craig, when we finally got that published, like 15% or so of the trees, I can't remember exact numbers, produced virtually none.
hmm
But I can't remember who I had the conversation with now, but we talked about, well, what role are those other individuals playing in the
Mhm.
system? And one idea that came
I
up is
think it was
they,
Dudley asked us that when we were, maybe on the
yeah,
show.
yeah, I thought you were involved, but one thing we came up with was that the excellent producers have to be pollinated, and
yes,
maybe the trees, they're just some are investing more in being good pollinator, the male part of that relationship, and could certainly be playing an important role that we don't necessarily observe in a heavy mass crop. They might be still critical to achieving those heavy mass crops.
exactly. And there's we could talk for days on this, but it may have to do with acorn predation, like by insects.
Mm-hmm.
If they drop a crop of acorns every year, they're probably more likely to complete the cycle of the acorn weevils
Mhm.
by producing heavy crops of acorns almost every year.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
So by having, we'll never understand how Mother Nature does these things, but it's fun to try to figure it out.
That's what I
So
was
I,
going to
Yeah.
say. That's what
I
makes it
hope
fun, right?
I hope some grad student comes along and something like that gets accepted as a project.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
would be a cool one to continue what's going on with that study.
Yeah. Well, I have a long-term oak project ongoing now. It's kind of a follow-up to the one, that Craig initiated years ago. But we've got some interesting things that I think you'll find interesting, especially about variation between individuals in the same species.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting things that I think will come from it. But well, I guess what about what about the Sawtooth Oak? What's the average age that people are getting massed out of those?
Pretty much dead on at 6 years. I don't know what it is, but their internal clock says 6 years. I've grown a couple in big pots that have made acorns in their third year.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as planting a seedling in the ground, it seems like whether I don't know. I get phone calls with people saying my sawtooths are 15 and hadn't made an acorn, but 90% of the time you plant a seedling and let it, get it to 3 or 4 years old and let it go. Year 6, it'll be dropping enough to bring a few deer and turkeys in.
So
Uh,
that's really it's on the fast end, but it's not faster than several of the native species you mentioned, right?
Not really. And when you think about it, their growth rates are fairly similar. So volume wise, while it may produce a few acorns at 6 years that a deer will find, or turkey may
Yeah.
find the little bits that the deer drops, it's really not until they're 10 to 12 years old that they've got a big enough canopy to really draw in the wildlife. And that's about the
Mhm.
same time that a native oak
Yeah.
has a big canopy of acorns on it. So I don't know. Honestly don't really see uh, the dry, why people want sawtooth so badly, why they think they're a silver bullet.
That's what I was wondering too. It almost makes me think if people, develop to the misperception that they produced so much earlier because they were some of the first oaks that were planted by people on a widespread, regular basis,
Hmm.
and they were open grown, right? And they had everything that they wanted to, and there weren't a lot of people initially doing that with native oaks. Or if it's maybe related more to their consistency of production. Is that how they found favor?
That's a good point.
Or the fact that it's the first thing producing
Yeah,
in the year.
it's early, so we did lose the American chestnut eons
Yeah.
ago, and chestnuts drop at a similar time, and so yeah, I mean the selling point with the sawtooth oak was always that's when does are lactating and fawns are hungry. It's droughty. A lot of
Mhm.
the deer food is really woody, and so. Um, yeah, having those things drop, you'll get a lot of trail camera pictures, things like that. Um, as far as turkeys go, you guys correct me, but I feel like they're eating a lot of seeds and insects and things in
Mhm.
September and early October, when sawtooths would be dropping. And
Mhm.
I know deer gobble them up, but I don't really think they're as important to turkeys at that time of year as
Right.
they've been advertised in the past. There's even a selection, USDA bred way back in the day called Gobbler, and it has
Yeah.
same species but a smaller acorn. And I don't know. I don't fall turkey hunt, so I don't check a lot of turkey crawls, but
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of. I don't hear of turkeys eating a whole lot of acorns that time of year. I feel like it's more seeds and bugs and little plants.
Right.
Well, and, if we're thinking about mast at the timing, I wonder, will we now have, great stock of chestnuts? So would it be better served to just go back with chestnut over? A lot of the range where they'd plant sawtooth instead.
I think so. I know sawtooth is on the invasive list in a few states. I've definitely seen it volunteer with a vengeance around some of my food plots. The chestnuts, they're all of Asian, for the most part, Asian origin.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a volunteer chestnut personally, so I really don't hear about them much. So they've been here over 100 years. I don't think they're going to be a problem as far as invasiveness goes. There's fewer tannins. Wildlife absolutely love to eat them. So I would choose those over a sawtooth. And it's such a bigger nut. So I feel like, and gosh, they just taste way better,
Yeah.
even by human standards. But
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I think deer are going to chew up. There's going to be bits and pieces all over the ground. So things like birds and turkeys are going to hone in and eat those. I even think you're going to get more insects coming in to eat on the bits and
Yeah.
pieces. And so, yeah, I would choose chestnut over sawtooth for sure.
So what about in terms of if you plant one of those seedlings, how long are we expecting before we start getting some mast? Is it same?
Chestnuts are incredibly precocious. I have planted a seedling in full sun on a good site. Nothing special. I didn't irrigate it. Fertilization, weed control. It grew to 9 foot 8 inches in the first year, and it's not uncommon to have them flower in their second year and make like 1 or 2 nuts.
Yeah.
But
So by
Or-
year 6 or 8, they may be making a fair amount in that
correct.
case.
Yep. Yeah. Year 3 or 4, you're going to have a couple nuts on them. So yeah, they're very precocious.
Wow. Okay.
I'm hoping the American chestnut can come back someday.
Yeah, the genetics work has been really, really cool to follow along. We've got
Mhm.
I guess the 15/16ths.
Yeah. And now they're doing some GMO work with a gene from the wheat plant. Um,
Oh, I hadn't
And
heard about
so-
this.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
gotten
amazing.
interesting. I think it's gotten a little political. The GMO thing.
Oh, wow.
And so they've had to backpedal a little bit. But yeah, it's an interesting story all in itself. But
Mhm.
I think I'm really confident that we'll be having, quote unquote American chestnuts here in the not so near future. But the 15/16 has not done very well either. It's kind of like the grocery store fruit thing. I think they're finding more problems that they weren't things they weren't selecting for
Mm-hmm.
outside of that blight trait that they were trying to get rid of that caused
Yeah.
some problems.
Well, I've thought about that a lot, and even if we're crossbreeding them with, a Chinese chestnut, I think about historically how dominant chestnuts were across the landscape, from the historical writings, and I'd be good with 15/16 of that back, I kind of
would
look
be-
at it that way.
I would be too. It's just it's way more complicated than us humans thought.
Mhm.
And they're starting to figure that out. If they want to turn it back into a wild species,
Right.
there's more to it for sure.
Yeah, it's a long road to hoe for sure. One of the things, if Marcus, if you don't mind me shifting the topic, I didn't know if you had anything else on that one, but I just kind of wanted to get into, like what are the things that people need to be thinking about that you find that they often don't when they're planting, whether it be soft or hard mass producers for
Yeah.
wildlife.
One of the main things is folks don't think about the future. So, for example, you go in and you plant a 1-year-old seedling right next to a 4-year-old pine plantation
Mm-hmm.
or 3-year-old pine plantation. Right about that time, they're probably still, I don't know, head high, maybe a little taller, but they are going to absolutely jump in the next few years. And so you got to take into account, what that landscape is going to look like in 15 years when you're planting trees.
Yeah.
That's another reason folks plant trees too close together. They're looking at these really small trees and don't necessarily picture in their mind that it's going to be huge someday. You see that when folks plant trees on the edge of their driveway or near their house,
Yeah.
or even out in the field. A lot of folks will fill up a log loading deck and not think
Yeah.
about the fact that if they're going to be harvesting timber in 10 or 15 years somewhere, that may need to be reused.
Ouch.
Um,
Yeah.
And so, or herbicide treatments. If you're growing pines and you're going to be spraying some type of release or whatever, you have to take that into account. Does it have a pollination buddy?
Yeah.
I have to call customers back sometimes when I see that they order one of a lot of things. Oaks
Yeah.
oaks may be able to pollinate themselves, but some individuals may not. Nobody's really done a lot of work on that either.
Yeah.
And so you definitely need to make sure you have, several of each if you can.
Chestnut's big on that, isn't it?
Chestnuts have to have a
Yeah.
pollinator.
Yeah.
Um,
Because they're dang sure ain't gonna be one naturally occurring nearby.
No. If so, it's probably going to flower and then die back to the ground. So
Yeah. Yeah. And if not, you need to call somebody
Yeah.
and let them know what you've got because it's special.
Yeah.
It's a very special one.
Yeah.
Well, I guess kind of in line with that question, what about from a tree care standpoint? Maybe what are the things that people need to be planning for if they want to plant things to be successful?
Yeah. I always tell folks to plan in advance. The last thing you want to do is get your seedlings or trees in the mail or wherever you get them and, not have thought out, where you were going to put them, but mainly how you're, when you don't want to get your trees and then go have to dig a hole, go ahead and, that summer before, think about what you want to order, think about what you're going to plant and where, we all like lay in bed or when we're supposed to be working, think about what we can be doing out at the farm, So pick those spots out, save them on your app and, maybe go stick a pin flag out in the field and spray a little circle of Roundup there, and come back a couple weeks later and take out a shovel, pre-dig your hole, kind of make it look like a miniature pitcher's mound,
Yeah.
put the dirt back. And that way, when your trees do arrive, you've got this nice garden-like tilthy soil that you can plant your trees into.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot better first and second year growth that way. You'll get a lot better survival. And you can also, the next time you go to the farm, ride around, you may want to move your pin flag over. You may change your mind.
Mm.
But that's a huge thing is don't just order trees and think about what you're going to do with them when they come in.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I can picture, a situation where somebody has several hundred trees arrive and they haven't, it's like we want to plant some around the roads and stuff like that, and it turning into a scramble.
Right. Another one is folks will, I don't know, maybe they'll get a new place and they'll come up with this grandiose management plan and they want to plant, a third of their place in trees. Well, it's what if you change your mind, or you also don't have enough time to baby those trees,
Yeah.
so maybe come up with a 5-year plan and plant a few trees every year. That way you'll have more time to maintain them. And you'll have more time to change your mind if you need to. That's an important one. I'm trying to think of some more, but I made a big mistake at my place. I work at a nursery, so I can go grab a couple seedlings and plant them. But I planted some Chickasaw plum on August the 1st out at my place, thinking, I see a rain coming, but it didn't happen. And so I've literally had to water those things every other day.
Oh my gosh.
to get them in. Thankfully I'm 20 minutes away, and I've got a great excuse to go out there after work. But
Yeah.
gosh, I hadn't been able to do anything else.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to do some hack and squirt and things like that. But gosh, I got to go water those 14 Chickasaw plums I planted, and bring a big old thing of water because I don't
Yeah.
have any irrigation out there. And so,
How
lesson
do you
learned.
how do
I'll,
you
I'll be
water your
saving my time on that.
how do you water your trees?
Um, my answer to that would be don't. If you can
Yeah.
plant your trees at the right time of year,
Uh-huh.
to where they can root in over the course of the winter and have a good root system for when that proverbial drought hits the next summer, which seems to happen more often than not these days.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If I do want to water them, they have those bags, like if you plant larger trees or something, they have those irrigation bags that drip water a
Yeah.
little bit at a time. You can get like a nurse buggy, or gosh, even use a herbicide tank if you clean the heck out of it.
Yeah.
And kind of figure out a hose system. I do it poor boy style. I just fill up a few ice chests full of water and put it in the back of my truck, and just go around and water them.
Yeah.
But again, lesson learned. I just kind of got excited and said, I want to get some Chickasaws out, and they'll make it because I'm not going to
Yeah.
let them die. But it's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
Opportunity cost. You could be doing
Mhm.
other things out there that are so critical this time of year.
Yeah, the reason I asked Dudley is I got the same wild hair that you did, and I planted some trees in my yard this summer. I it was actually, it to my credit, I ended up having I guess you could call it a seedling windfall.
Okay,
There was
yeah.
another lab throwing out a bunch of trees that they had been growing in a greenhouse, and so suddenly I'd received all these trees that I needed to plant, and I ended up going with some of those little water rings that you were talking about, the bags that you just fill up. And so I can just, tote a hose around the yard and fill those up, and then they leach that water out a little bit around the
And
trees.
and
So
that's the beauty of that system is
yeah,
it's kind of like, I wish I could drag a hose to all of those plums I planted
yeah,
and just leave it on drip for 30
right,
minutes and then move it to the next tree.
right,
But yeah, those irrigation bags or donuts, they do work well if you want to deal with that time expense.
yeah. But for the most part, what you were saying is you feel like if you plant during the right time of the year and you allow them to establish those roots over winter, you're probably, hopefully, except an extreme drought, of course, right? Not going to have to
Right.
water those.
We've got customers in Texas and things.
Sure.
That can you, or even, like Kansas, a lot of those states are pretty arid.
Yeah.
We get over 50 inches a year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those weed mats help a lot, and
Mm,
actually the non-porous ones, like people say, well, rainwater can't get through there, but
yeah.
what it does is when water tries to evaporate out of the ground, it gets
Mhm.
trapped
Right.
under that weed mat. It's
Right.
just a square of it almost looks like garbage bag type material, and it works really well
Mhm.
Mm.
if you're in a dry area. But yes, containerized seedlings seem to be the way to go these days. In the South, we can basically plant from the time the leaves fall off the trees. Uh, a good time to cut off is when turkey season starts. But the sooner the better. You get those trees in the ground in December, which is the rut for a lot of people in the South, but go ahead and knock it out.
Mhm.
Let them be
Mhm.
rooting in over the course of the winter. Our soils are relatively warm in the winter.
Yeah.
And they'll, compared to a March planted seedling, they will have several more months of root growth ahead of
See,
them.
I didn't realize that they were growing their roots during that time. Like if
They
you
are.
planted in December, that they
Mhm.
would be growing roots in December,
hmm
January, February.
And then folks up north, you can plant in the fall as well. So like peak fall color, and when the leaves are falling off the trees, get them in the ground. It may be a little bit dry up there that time of year. Water them 2 or 3 times, and then the fall and winter rain patterns, snow patterns start kicking in, and they're good.
Mhm.
And they can even root in a little bit over the winter, even though the ground is cold up there.
Okay.
So, a spring planted tree up north, Um, that's been the traditional way of doing it. I'm not knocking it. It's still available, but tree availability is usually on the low end at that time of year. And, if you have a droughty summer up north, that's just, less root growth you're going to have
Gotcha.
before it hits.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Dudley, you've kind of been doing this along through the conversation, but I wanted to prompt you. I think it would be useful. It definitely would be for me, but maybe even for the listeners. Could you walk us through what, let's say we've selected some species and a location. What is the ideal plan from planting that seedling? You were talking about the time of year. I think we've probably got a good handle on that. But after that, what would be the ideal tree care to keep that plant growing and healthy and getting, to mass
That's right.
ultimately quickly?
So you've got that thing in the ground. Turkey season is going on. I hope everybody has a good turkey season, but maybe you get one and you can spend the rest of that day checking on your trees. The first thing I'm going to look for is a lot of grasses and weeds growing around my trees. Particularly grasses are going to take a lot more moisture and nutrients out of the soil in the direct vicinity of that tree. So I'm going to do a burn down herbicide treatment in about a 3-foot radius around each tree. If you're not into the herbicide thing, you can always do some mulch. You can use some of those weed mats I was telling you about, or you can even do both, the best of both worlds. Put down a weed mat or some mulch, and then have about a 1-foot zone of weed freeness around the mulch, because you don't want grass, again, sucking all the moisture out from under that mulch either.
Right.
Usually when you get that big green up in the spring is a great time to go in there and do that. You may want to do some more weed control sometime in July again. I like to use glyphosate. The pre-emergence and things kind of scare me a little bit. They work fine, especially, if you follow the label, but I've had it settle in the bottom of the jug a couple times, and the glyphosate works great. I also like to dibble a little bit of fertilizer right next to the seedling. It just depends on the fertilizer you're using, but I prefer not to spread it around the area. I usually, just on a young seedling, I make one slit about 5 or 6 inches away from the main stem, and drop it about 1 inch deep. Those fine fibrous feeder roots are going to be really close to the soil surface. A lot of folks mistakenly put fertilizer under the root system. Well, that nitrogen moves really quickly through the soil profile, and it may drop down below that root zone and not get any nitrogen. So most folks will use a slow release type of fertilizer like Osmocote. We've got something on our website. And just punch it, just like you're side dressing corn. So some of those roots can find that and give it back to the plant, but the rest of the roots are in that nice living soil that you've got that isn't covered in salty fertilizer. Check for insect problems. I try my best not to spray insects. I'm trying to feed my turkeys, so
Right.
those plants were put there. But if I do have a serious problem, I'm going to call an entomologist at my local university, maybe email them a photo, find out what that insect is, and figure out how to nip that in the bud. Some light pruning. You may have some stems trying to grow from the ground, or it may try to have a double main stem, so you can slide that tree tube up and prune that off. That kind of thing.
In that case, are you doing that during the winter, the pruning?
I'll go ahead and do it in the growing season. In areas where you have that oak wilt disease, you may want to wait until a dormant season. But I like to go ahead and get that done so the rest of the plant can be getting all that energy.
Okay.
Dudley, are you disinfecting your equipment or anything like that between pruning trees, or is that just too extreme?
I, um, we're dealing with native trees that have
Yeah,
evolved for gazillions of years with all of those problems.
yeah,
So I typically don't do that. If I'm
yeah.
pruning like a grafted apple orchard, which I
Right,
don't have, I would recommend doing that
right.
between cuttings.
Yeah, gotcha.
So yeah, we don't use fungicides at the nursery or rarely use insecticides. Um, if your tree is not stressed, it's not going to send out a calling signal to a lot of these problematic insects.
Mm,
Just like the whole pine beetle thing. Um, Stress trees are where you develop a lot of your problems. And so
absolutely.
you can avoid those by planting a quality seedling, putting it on the site that it needs to be on, um, and making sure that it's off to a good start. And then the next step, once they start growing out of the tree tubes that I hope you used, or a cage, you do have to worry about deer eating it as it grows out of the tube.
Yeah,
And so you may have to go by like in June or July when the trees are exiting the tubes and just squirt a little deer away or something in the top of the tube to try to avoid that. I'm not a big fan of the really tall tree tubes.
mm,
I do want that tree to get up and out of that tube so it can be growing a little bit of a canopy, which helps
yeah,
with the diameter growth. Um, those tubes work great, but it's really not natural. They put on a lot of height growth and less diameter growth. And so
mm,
getting them up and out of that tube to where they can put on some diameter growth is a big part of it to me.
yeah,
So you're probably going to have to spray a little bit of deer away because they love eating that tree growing out of the top of the tube.
yeah. So how long do you typically end up leaving tubes on different groups? I mean, I'm sure it varies, but like general recommendations for different groups of trees.
Yeah, good question. I like to remove the stake as soon as the tree is able to hold itself up.
Mm-hmm.
That may be usually that's year 3. I don't want the tree roots growing around the stake.
Mm-hmm.
I can pull that and maybe reuse it. And then I leave the tube on as long as absolutely possible to
Okay.
deter from buck rubbing.
Yeah.
Um, and so it'll even, the UV will start breaking it down.
Yeah.
And even the tree will outgrow it in
Yeah.
diameter and it'll start splitting.
Mm.
Oftentimes I just take a box cutter or a knife and go ahead and complete that lengthwise slit
Mm-hmm.
so the tree can grow even wider with that tube around it. Um, so it may be year 6 or 7 before you have to go in and just get them off the ground.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I guess it's really not hurting anything.
it's really not. Leaves and things can accumulate in there that you need to get rid of from time to time. You may have wasps' nests in
Yeah.
there that raccoons and coyotes will chew on. Um, we do have fire ants in the south, so you may have to use fire ant treatment to keep that fire ant nest from forming inside the tube. That's very
Mm-hmm.
common. Um,
And
and so using a product like bifenthrin, follow the label for fire ants, that will deter the ants and the wasps. And I usually, punch a little fertilizer around them until about the 3rd year, do the weed control. Then usually around year 3 or 4, I start tapering off of my intensive management and then just letting Mother Nature take over.
so, Dudley, another question. I know a lot of folks are not in a situation like you described where it's just down the road, where they can visit
Yeah,
frequently.
my former place was 2 hours away.
Yeah, and mine currently, I'm 8 hours away, and
Okay.
there's nobody at home that wants to take care of the trees other than mowing them down for me. Uh, so, what are some things that people that are in that situation, how might they be able to alter that to try to, maybe they can't create the ideal conditions, but they can take some actions to make sure they're
Sure.
successful.
I think if you can check them twice a summer, that's not bad. Um, So you go in with that original treatment to do the weed control. I know you're going to be going down there in the spring,
Mm.
and fertilize them. You may can even fertilize them on planting day. Especially if you're planting in the late winter.
Mhm.
And then try to go back once in the mid to late summer and check on them again. But just have all your stuff ready. Have your pruners, have your herbicide, have your fire ant control, have your deer away. And it's very similar. You just need to pack it into fewer trips, maybe plant fewer trees on an annual basis so you'll have more time with each one when you do go. And have a game plan. Know what you're going to do when you get there. Have all your tools in a bucket. Don't show up and realize you got to drive 30 minutes to the store and get something you forgot.
Yeah. Man, this is firing me up to go want to go plant some trees. I'm just thinking about how fun it is, and that's one of the things that we haven't even talked about much. When you
It's
can
so
stay,
rewarding.
yeah, and especially when you stay consistent and you're planting a few trees along, and you start to see that build up over time, and you start seeing it pay off.
It really is. It's very therapeutic, and we're not young bucks anymore. We start thinking about things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you showing up the next time and seeing that it's made 2 flushes of growth.
Yeah,
It's very rewarding, and just
yeah,
I enjoy thinking about where I'm going to put them.
Yeah.
Like that perfect spot where those mulberries are going to fall on that edge of road where nothing ever grows, where they just fall on bare ground, and hoping
hmm
you can put your camera there to take inventory of the gobblers that made it through the year. Those mulberries usually drop, right when turkey season's over. Um,
Yeah,
just
Man, they're
things
a
like that.
magnet too.
yeah,
It's
they
just
are.
it is a lot of fun. I'm glad you brought that side of it up.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
a lot of my customers call every year and just they may only get 3 or 4, but
yeah,
that's what they're chasing, is that enjoyment out of
yeah.
it.
But
Uh,
if most landowners, planted, half a dozen trees a year, I mean, it adds up over
Yeah.
time. Like if
it
they stay
really does.
consistent with it.
That's what I've been doing for years. In
Yeah.
fact, I was going to tell you, Dudley, in terms of the enjoyment, I was up for Labor Day weekend recently at my family's, and I got some seedlings from you in 2016, I think, in that winter of the pear. I forgot what you named your pear
Okay.
tree,
Deer
but
pear.
those things, they were planted in 2016. They're 30 foot tall. They're giant. They've got massive amounts of fruit all over them.
Mhm.
And I was just like the enjoyment of seeing them be successful. And I have some chestnuts that are not far behind them. They haven't
Mhm.
started fruiting yet, but I love going and checking on the chestnuts just to
Yeah.
see like what have they done.
It's and being able to put a camera on them and seeing all that wildlife, coming to your spot that you created.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I tell you what, one of the biggest problems, especially in the South, is finding places to plant trees. We
Yeah.
got trees
Yeah, we got a
everywhere.
lot of trees.
Yeah.
We hadn't been
no
using
shortage.
fire for 200 years, and we got everything open is cows or agriculture. So
Yeah.
I've got about 120 acres at my place to work with. I've been actively, staring at my own X, trying to find places that I'm going to open up to
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
new trees on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I think a lot of folks are in that boat.
I agree. Yeah.
Well,
so
Dudley, I know, we've been talking a while, and I did not want us to get out of here without talking about tree selection for turkeys.
okay,
It-
for sure.
One thing I wanted to ask you, are you seeing the tide change at all in the customer base
Oh
or
my
is there a
gosh.
growing interest in focusing plantings on turkeys?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. And
That's what I kind of
I
figured.
think I have you guys are partly to blame for this, but it was like you flipped a switch. We went from sawtooth and white oak being the top, and persimmon, which is also a great turkey tree,
hmm
but to everything, the black cherry, black gum,
Mm-hmm.
mulberries, all the different plums, Yes, it has changed drastically.
I love that.
Even folks getting into, I'm getting
I
off
hope we
subject
are to
here,
blame.
but all the early successional plants,
Yeah.
flowers, and people are learning that you're not just planting trees for the mass that it drops.
Yeah.
You're planting trees for the suite of insects that uses that particular species.
Mhm.
I don't know, if you've got nothing but one kind of oaks, you may only have one kind of caterpillar falling out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably not a very accurate statement, but I think you
Well,
get
it's
my
less diverse, probably.
yes.
I don't think anyone would argue you have more species of caterpillars in areas with fewer species of trees, but
Right. And so folks are seeing the big picture now.
yeah.
And that's a huge thing, and it's very rewarding for what we do to see uh, people making that change. I mean,
Yes.
I was there, 5 or 6 years ago. It was all about that mast,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and where you were going to put them for your deer hunting spots with the wind, and I still love that aspect of it.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking big picture. I want to see a bunch of different songbirds when I'm turkey hunting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was looking at, I think it was a Mississippi Native Facebook group, and a woman had posted a photo of a mulberry tree, and she captured 17 different songbirds going to that one tree in one day.
Wow.
That's really cool, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I had a customer send in a photo of, I think it was 3 jakes up in about a 5-year mulberry tree he had planted, jumping
Nice.
from limb to limb, ripping the mulberries out of it.
Now
Yeah.
we're talking.
So
Yeah, I feel like mulberry is one of those species that's kind of underappreciated.
It's a sleeper.
Yeah, it is.
We have a bunch on our property, just native ones, and
Mhm.
about late May or early June when I'm at the property, sometimes I'll go and peek under them, and I'm always just kind of blown away with the amount of activity, not
Yes.
just deer and turkeys,
Yes.
but just wildlife activity. Like everything
Mhm.
is seeking those out,
Oh, yeah.
including me. I think they're delicious too.
Well, yeah, we've got a couple of them on our South Alabama satellite campus, and that I teach our summer course at. And there's been several years where they're dropping, and I've noticed that snakes will hang out underneath them too because of the diversity of the prey base they attract.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's pretty cool.
I'm trying to think of more, but yeah, the
Now we may be.
mulberry.
I shouldn't have said that. Now people may not want to plant them.
You're gonna eat all our pelts, the snakes.
I'm sorry, Dudley. I talked over you. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying that the undersung trees are like mulberry, black cherry, and black gum.
Mhm.
It used to be everybody wanted crab apples and things like that, which are great, but these undersung small mast species are becoming more and more important
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
in our minds.
Do they
So
tend to be a little bit more hardy?
I wouldn't necessarily say hardy. A lot of those you don't really find. They tend to inhabit the edges a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that just seems like they compete better. A lot of those just don't become like a massive oak. There's parts of the country, the Cumberland Plateau, up in the Northeast, black cherry become gargantuan.
Mhm.
But for the most part, those species I mentioned are great for planting along the edge of something.
Yeah.
And they kind of lean out. Black gum might be a little bit different. It has a slightly different growth habit, but it also does really well on the edge where it's easier for a lot of these species to find them and scratch them up.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I guess what are your go-to species? Like, what are maybe an early and a late oak in terms of when they're dropping, and then maybe a couple of fruiting species around the
Sure.
year? Like, what would be your go-to
You
for
know,
turkeys?
the small acorn red oaks are hard to beat. And I
Mhm.
have to be broad with that because we're talking to people all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also drop pretty early. Water oak, willow oak, cherry bark oak, shingle oak, pin oak. Uh, have I anyway, those.
Yeah.
They not only drop fairly early, depending on where you are, that may be mid-September on into, mid to late November. But the deer will be working on them. But they're small acorns. They're pretty high in tannins, so some of them will get avoided by deer until later on.
Mm-hmm.
But they end up under the leaf litter. And when you're going out scouting in February and there's barely any turkey food around, that's what they're scratching up, is those little bitty acorns.
Yeah.
And thanks to those tannins, they last a lot longer. They're not going to sprout.
Right.
And that's what they're going to be eating on. So that's my answer. That is early and late, small acorn reds. My buddy Mariah Bogus kind of turned me on to that. He did a study a few years back. Y'all may have been involved in that as well.
Yeah, I was his advisor.
Scarlet Oak was one of them. That turned me on to that phenomenon. And, and I go walking around at the public land, and that's where you're going to find the scratching.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to eat acorns in the fall. But again, there's going to be a lot of other seeds and bugs and things like that. But when it starts freezing at night and all of those bugs are harder to find, that's when they're going to start keying on that awesome food source.
Yeah.
And then those small mast we've been mentioning, mulberry's the first to come in, then black cherry, then black gum. Black gum are dropping now. Muscadine is another cool one. So.
Yeah, and then you mentioned earlier persimmon, I guess, would be a little later on into the fall.
Persimmon would be October. They're probably going to be pecking at bits and pieces of that. They basically fall down and turn into mush, but it's sweet and savory mush. And then there's also going to be a lot of bugs in there too.
Yeah.
Right.
When that stuff is fermenting, it's going to be attracting all kinds of insects that they're going to be going to.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, is there anything we're forgetting to ask you that you expected us to ask?
I knew we were going to be hitting on all those cool turkey species that we wanted to kind of separate from all the popular deer trees.
Right.
But not really. Just plant a few trees, get out there and have fun with it. Whether you're ordering them from a nursery like me, we've got some folks that like to grow a few on their own in their backyard. That's also pretty addictive. But when you do fail, you can always come get some from me. Just, check out Mossy Oak. You can go to that website and find native nurseries or, any of our businesses for that matter. I'd be happy to help anybody pick out what they need for their particular place. That's what I do. But, y'all come visit me at the nursery.
I need to get over there. I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I've had some fun over there.
We've got a cool prairie just down the road.
Oh, nice.
Helped Marcus on a lab back in the day, looking at some cool prairie species. But it's a fun area here around West Point.
Because y'all are starting to propagate a lot of the herbaceous species too now, right?
We are. So we've been collecting some local ecotypes this summer, getting into that. So got a lot going on.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, and I was gonna add, like, if anybody listening has, ever received enjoyment from planting a food plot, I feel like trees are just like that next level because you get that continuity over time. And
I really, really enjoy it. It is definitely addictive.
Growth.
Yeah. Trees were my gateway drug. Food plots were for some people. It varies, but out of all of my things in life that I've obsessed over, the tree obsession has not subsided at all.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of fun, and it's got a lot of customers with the same comment.
Yeah, I think that's where Marcus and I are getting to, is we're throwing out all the gateway drugs possible to get people managing their land. Whether it's trees or food plots or burning or trapping or whatever gets you engaged.
Yep.
Yeah.
Plant that seed. It's fun. And we talk about it all the time. We all love to hunt, but my favorite thing to do is go out there and just goof and piddle and get stuff done and improve things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate your time and expertise, Dudley.
Well, thanks
Yeah.
guys for having me.
Yeah, it was a really fun conversation, and addressing a lot of our comments, I guess. So we've been wanting to have an episode like this. So really glad to have you. It's always fun discussing this stuff with you.
Well, thanks for feeding adding fuel with all of you guys' data and studies. It keeps me going.
Good deal.
Got to have the academics to keep me going.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody out there for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Another one that came from our listeners. So keep sending us stuff. Keep letting us know what you want to hear, and we'll keep trying to deliver.
Wild Turkey Science is part of the Natural Resources University podcast network and is made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow, a grassroots organization dedicated to the wild turkey. To learn more about TFT, check out turkeysfortomorrow.org.